And we are recording this. A lot of people signed up, but we know this might be a difficult time for people to step away from work. So we are recording this in order to share it out. But I think just to start off, we would love to introduce ourselves. Andrew, I'm going to hand it off to you first.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Hey, Patricia, great to meet you, and great to meet everybody else who gets the opportunity to watch this recording of the webinar. My name's Andrew. I'm a pilgrimage sales manager here at Verso, which means I get the lovely opportunity to work with folks like you at the parish level, at the diocesan level, religious order level, to work on trips together. So I work with group leaders in order to, formulate a plan for their pilgrimage, ushering them through what we call the Verso Way, which you'll hear more about later and what that looks like actually like on the ground and how that works. So I'm basically going to be your touch point with regards to working with Verso and putting together your pilgrimage, which I'm greatly looking forward to.
Great. And my name is Joan. I have my camera on now so that you can see I'm a real live human being. I'm turning it off only because we've had some technological issues. I'm actually at the Chancery in Fort Wayne, South Bend, in Fort Wayne, and we're having some internet issues. So if the video is off, the hope is that you can hear me better. But my name is Joan Watson, and I'm the Pilgrim Formation Manager at Verso Ministries. But my background actually is in catechesis, in diocesan catechesis. So for 6 years, I worked with the Dominican sisters to catechize and form the laity, especially the lay catechists in 3 different dioceses. And then 6 years later, I went to the Diocese of Nashville and I was the director of adult formation, and then later promoted to the director of the Office of Faith Formation, where I oversaw all faith formation in the entire Diocese of Nashville for 6 years. So I say that because my background really is in catechesis. It was this job that Verso kind of created to bring catechesis into pilgrimage that led me to move to South Bend, and I now work at Verso. So I am in charge of forming pilgrims before, during, and after pilgrimage. And it's really with that in mind that we created this webinar specifically for the Diocese of Bridgeport, but really for any priests who are asking those questions that all priests, I think, ask. And I just want to say, with this background, I'm not here to create more problems for our priests and our group leaders. I'm here to solve those problems. But you probably are wondering a little bit about who is Verso. So before we launch into the problems and the solutions,
Yes.
Andrew, I'm going to hand this back to you.
Great. Thanks, Joni. Yeah, so Verso Ministries, as you could probably already imagine, is a Catholic pilgrimage company. We're based in South Bend, Indiana. And we have the great opportunity to work with groups just like yours at the diocesan, like I said earlier, parish level to put pilgrimages together for your communities. And we've had the great fortune of being trusted by many organizations across the United States. As you can see there on the left-hand side of your screen, we have a long list that's much longer than that, but that's just a little bit of a sampling of the types of organizations that we've partnered with for future or current or past pilgrimages that we've been able to run. Um, and as you can see in the top left part of your screen there, the core focus in all of this, everything that we do, is to use pilgrimage as a vehicle or as a medium for facilitating encounters with Jesus Christ. So all of these pilgrimages that we've been able to run, that's been the core focus on why we're doing what we're doing. And then on the right-hand side of your screen, those 3 unique. So the things that we believe here at Verso set us apart from our competitors in our industry and are part of the process, like I said earlier, with the Verso Way, which you'll be able to experience firsthand if you take the leap and decide to work with us on putting together a pilgrimage. And so starting at the top there, the intentional and thorough pilgrimage process really speaks to that Verso Way in a real substantial meaning, in a real substantial way, I should say, just because we work you through a very intentional process and making sure that whatever you sign on the dotted line for and whatever you're hoping for us to execute has been done or has been thoughtfully prepared and very customizable, very personal. So we work together with you hand in glove to make sure that whatever you're putting together for you and your parish or otherwise other community that you're hoping to serve is really what you're looking for and not just Verso trying to stuff a preset pilgrimage down your throat or something like that. Personalized support and care. This kind of really the rubber meets the road here after we begin to work together, after we've signed a contract with one another and the pilgrimage is being marketed and sold to your folks. So the personalized support and care, you'll have a team here with their pilgrim support team to kind of work with your pilgrims, make sure that any of their questions are being answered. The sales team is here to help support people get registered online. If they need help with registration, we're also here to help answer questions about the trip if they maybe have some hesitations or unsure about some details that are perhaps listed on the website and they want some more information. We're here to help from the beginning to the end. And then kind of all the way at the bottom there, all centered on Jesus, echoing the core focus, facilitating encounters with Jesus Christ. All of it is about using pilgrimage for that specific end. I'll turn it back over to Joni.
Um, Great. Yes. So that's a little bit about who Verso is and how we try to help our groups with that idea that that pilgrimage really is a vehicle. I love that Andrew pointed that out. That's how we see pilgrimage as a vehicle, as a medium for that encounter with Christ. And so in my own work in parishes, in diocesan work, I saw very clearly the same problems that our parish priests are dealing with in every single parish, right? Struggling with those disengaged parishioners. It seems like some people are doing all the work in a parish. How do I get people involved? How do I fill in those gaps in the catechesis in my people? People are leaving the parishes maybe because they feel more welcome in other places or they feel disattached from the parish. And then, of course, I think what remains on everybody's mind is that collections, if our parishioners are disconnected, if I can't get my parishioners to be even coming to Sunday Mass, inevitably there's those low collections. And that sounds kind of crass to some people to be just thinking about the money. But if I don't have the resources to teach my parishioners, if I don't have the resources to serve my parishioners, they are going to leave. And so it seems like a vicious cycle sometimes in our mind. And this is what, I dealt with as a director of faith formation in a diocese and what I worked alongside pastors and priests to deal with these questions that we all ask ourselves, right? So, how do we move people from just attending Mass to actual discipleship and following Christ? How do we reach people who just have written off the church? And how do I unite my parishioners? How do I make a parish community? And I would pose that a lot of the times we look to more programming. We say, okay, well, we will have retreats, for example, but will people show up to those retreats? Will they understand the importance of what's happening? And I say this as someone who travels around the country and gives retreats. I'm also a Catholic speaker. Sometimes people leave those events more attached to the speaker than the parish itself. And so, what's the answer here? And I am posing that I think, and I think this is Verso's beautiful gift to the church, that what if we did a retreat on the road? And what I mean by that, what if we, yes, maybe do a little bit more programming, but it's centered around an experience and an encounter and a shared experience of pilgrimage. And so when we talk about pilgrimage, we see pilgrimage as that encounter with Jesus Christ through accompaniment, this transformative journey, and this experience of the universal church. And those are all things that people are hungry for. Those are all things that actually answer the questions that I've already posed and answer the problems that I've already posed. And so you might be thinking, okay, why? Why pilgrimage in particular? Why is that an answer to these problems? Now, there's no obviously silver bullet. This isn't going to answer all your problems, but I would like to pose it as a solution among many that might transform your parish. There are many reasons why I think pilgrimage makes an impact in people's lives, but here are three. Number one, it gives them a real sacramental worldview. It gives them an understanding that God wants to have this personal relationship with them and uses the world to do it. I wrote a book on pilgrimage last year called Making a Pilgrimage, a Companion for Catholics. And I begin that book with the story of me going to Bethlehem and touching the place where Christ was born. And I remember thinking I was in line to touch the place and I was getting so excited. I was going down these narrow stairs. It was very crowded. And I thought, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to feel? What am I going to pray? And I remember crouching down and touching that place. You have to get down on your hands and knees to touch the place. And I remember the only words that came to my mind were simply, thank you. Thank you. That's all I could imagine saying when I knelt at the place where God was born for me. And reflecting on it later, I realized at that moment, an intellectual idea to which I knew, I had taught, I had assented to, I'd committed my life to, that idea suddenly had become even more real. Why? Because I touched the place where it happened. And God wants to be encountered in this way. He doesn't just want to be encountered in the realm of the mind through intellectual exercise. He doesn't want to just be encountered through spiritual conversation. He wants to be encountered by us in all of our senses. And in such, he comes to us through all of our senses. We believe in this sacramental worldview, not just a seven sacrament belief, but that God comes to us in a sunset. God comes to us in a beautiful glass of wine, right? Shared in a conversation with friends. Not, of course, sacramentally, not really physically present, but that he comes to us in these experiences to touch us with his grace. Pope Francis said that the church and the people of God are concrete. And I think that's what pilgrimage does, is it helps us see what God is willing to do for us and what God continues to do for us. You can see a beautiful high resolution picture of the Sistine Chapel online. In fact, in that picture, you can probably see more details than you can if you're stuck in the chapel itself with crowds and craning and looking upward. But a pilgrimage to the Sistine Chapel isn't unnecessary because you can see it on a computer screen, because that image is not the same on a computer screen, just as much as this conversation isn't the same through a computer screen as it would be if we were together. And so pictures are not the same as personal contact and seeing and touching and tasting. The other thing that pilgrimage does for us, and there's that place I spoke about, that's the place where you get on your hands and knees and touch the place where God was born for us. The Jesus Christ was born. I think it's also the importance of place. When God became man, he became man at a certain time and place. And we can't disregard the importance of that. And so, yes, we go on pilgrimage to these places, to the earth where Jesus stood. And to do so changes your experience of that moment. I liken it to like the Battle of Gettysburg. I can tell you the story of the Battle of Gettysburg, and you can mentally picture it. You can watch the movie Gettysburg, and you can see the places, and you can begin to grasp the high and the low and the drama. But nothing compares to walking through Devil's Den or standing at the field of Pickett's Charge. And after that, the books read differently because you've walked there. It's no longer just mental images and stories, but it's yours. And that's multiplied exponentially when you go on pilgrimage. These are not just stories on a page. You're just not reading a book about Fatima. You've been there, you've prayed there. And these stories are real. I think there's a temptation for spiritual stories, whether it's Christ's life or the miracles that break through our lives. It's a temptation for these spiritual stories to be detached from physical lives. You hear the stories of the Bible so often, they become like children's stories. You hear the story of the miracle of sun at the Fatima or Juan Diego's tilma, and they become almost like a fantasy to us, even if we don't realize it. But when you pray in front of Juan Diego's tilma, you cease to think of it as a character in a story, and you realize that God intervenes in history. He intervened in history at the incarnation, and he continues to intervene now. And that's one of the lessons of pilgrimage, that my story is this story, and that God will intervene for me as he's intervened for these people, because it really happened. I remember standing on Mount Nebo, which is where Moses died. And I just kept telling people, Moses, he's real. He's real. He really existed. And at this point, I was director of the Office of Faith Formation, and people were like, Joni, you've taught this your whole life. Why is there this sudden realization? It wasn't that I didn't believe in Moses before, but suddenly he became much more real to me. I also think we can't underestimate the classroom of pilgrimage. When we look at the teaching of children, we understand that they need to touch, right? Building blocks, models, hands-on learning. We see it throughout preschool classrooms all the time. Children need to experience things with the senses. But then as we grow older, we turn to books, and we turn to lectures, and we turn to podcasts. But Thomas Aquinas reminds us that knowledge comes through the senses. And if children experience wonder and come to an understanding of God through methods like catechesis of the Good Shepherd and other hands-on experiences, I think we as adult Christians need the sensory experience, which we find in pilgrimage. John Paul II said that pilgrimage is an important form of catechesis because we learn on pilgrimage. We learn these stories. We learn, as I mentioned, the miracle stories. We learn that God is real. We learn that God intervenes into human history. Our prayers are answered. We see the lives of the saints. We pray where the saints prayed. And so there's such catechetical opportunity in pilgrimage, both about God, the saints, church history, but then also about ourselves. On pilgrimage, we learn about ourselves. We learn our weak points. We learn where we're prone to sin. We learn where we're prone to anger when we get tired. We learn what it means to rely on others when luggage is lost or when we're lost. We are reminded how short our temper is. And we realize how blessed our daily lives are. Pilgrimage can be such a time of emptying, not in this new age practice, but for the sake of making room to be filled when we go back home with the Holy Spirit. And so on pilgrimage, we learn a lot about ourselves. We learn about a lot about our community, how to live with each other, how to pray, and we learn how to live that pilgrimage of life. And so, how does pilgrimage transform a parish community? And there are many ways. I'm going to outline four that I have seen firsthand from leading 20, 25, 30 trips to Rome, to Mexico City, to Lourdes, to all of Europe, to France. I've led these trips and I've seen firsthand a parish be transformed through individual transformation. And I think the thing that strikes me, first of all, is the reminder to your parishioners that they are not alone, that they are part of a great story, that the church is bigger than they thought. I've seen this when people have gone on pilgrimage and they're struggling. I will omit names to protect the innocent and the guilty, but I've walked with people who are struggling with their pastor, who are struggling with the bishops or a bishop, and they go on pilgrimage and they realize that yes, they have real struggles, and yes, they have real crosses, and they have real complaints, but they are not alone. First of all, the church has always been in need of reform, and they walk the same streets as Catherine of Siena and Francis of Assisi and Philip Neri and realize we've always needed reform, and the saints have reformed. But they also realize that the church is not just their parish, is not just their diocese, is not just the United States of America. We can become so myopic in thinking that it's all about my 9 a.m. Sunday Mass. It's music, it's time, even, right? Don't you dare change the time of my Mass, Father, when you come to my new parish. We can become so centered on our community, which isn't a bad thing. But when you go on pilgrimage, you realize your story is so much bigger. You are part of this story that you witness on pilgrimage, and that you are called to bear witness in going home. The photos above bear witness to this. On the right, you see Mass celebrated at the rock in Gethsemane, where Christ wept blood for our sins. How do you go to Mass in the Garden of Gethsemane and not be moved outside yourself? On the left is a Mass at the tomb of John of the Cross. You know, suddenly John of the Cross is not just a spiritual writer. He's not just a poet. He's not someone who just struggled under, unfair religious persecution, but he is a reformer that's just like you and me, and that was a real man, right? And then I love the picture in the middle. That's a group of high school kids that I was blessed to take on pilgrimage, and they're praying in front of a relic of Mary Magdalene's foot. And they had so much enthusiasm. And they were so excited and they were so hyper all day. And then we stood in front of that relic and they got very, very silent. And I could see them reflecting on the fact that this was the foot that entered the empty tomb for the first time to make witness for the resurrection of Christ. And they were taken back 2,000 years. And it's an experience they'll never, ever forget. The other thing that pilgrimage transforms a parish through is through community and friendship. Through community and friendship, when you travel together, you learn each other in ways that you can never really get to know each other through coffee and donuts or through sitting together at Mass. Think about a parish that has different Mass times, and suddenly those people might not even know each other, and suddenly they're at Mass. They're living together, right? They're eating together. They're living together on pilgrimage. Think about a pastorate that might have multiple parishes, right? A priest is in charge of multiple parishes. This is the experience I had on pilgrimage last summer when a priest was in charge of 3 different parishes, and he decided to take those parishes on pilgrimage. And people were meeting each other really for the first time. And there was one woman, I'll call her Judy. I'll change names to protect the innocent. Judy was the only woman from one of the parishes, and the other parishioners weren't crazy about Judy because when they had a parish meeting to talk about the merging of parishes, Judy was very outspoken and very, very hurt by the merging, very outspoken against the merging. And the other parishioners took it personally that Judy didn't want to be part of their parish. And so they had a little grudge against Judy. She seemed opinionated, she seemed strong-willed, she seemed rude. Let's just say it. When they went on pilgrimage with Judy, that changed because they got to know Judy and they ate dinner with Judy. They prayed with Judy. They got to know Judy. And suddenly they went back home realizing that she wasn't that different from them. And they're now friends. And everybody hangs out together, even though they go to different parishes. And so I saw firsthand this unity that can happen in ways, and this parish community and unity that can happen in ways that just can't happen stateside. The third, I think, transformative power of pilgrimage is that of beauty. The power of beauty to be a path to encounter God, a path to encounter Christ. You know, beauty can stir the mind and the heart. It can stir the senses. It can stir the intellect. And I've been on pilgrimage where people have just been in awe of whether it's a beautiful church, whether it's a beautiful work of act of nature. Beauty converts. A friend of mine took it was a friend of mine's friend took his daughter on pilgrimage, and they were essentially just going around Europe. And she was not a practicing Catholic, nor was he. But when she saw the great cathedrals of Europe, she had to ask herself, who is the man that inspired this? Who is the man that inspired this art? And she eventually came to Christianity simply through the beauty that she saw. And lastly, I have seen a return to the sacraments on pilgrimage. People encounter the Lord, have prayers answered. Most of our trips include daily mass. I have to say, when I was putting together a pilgrimage, and one of the pilgrims expressed worry that we were going to mass every day, and wouldn't that take a long time? And she didn't know if she'd be ready for that. And she was experiencing a big Sunday mass, right, with all the prayers, with the Gloria and the singing and she had never experienced daily mass, and she had never experienced the intimacy of daily mass, the quiet of daily mass. And after she experienced daily mass on the trip, she started going to daily mass at home because she had this experience that she didn't have. She could have had, but she didn't have, right? And so just the return to the sacraments pilgrimage can be a great way to evangelize. Everybody wants to go to Europe. Who doesn't want to go to Rome? Who doesn't want to eat Italian food? And so you bring your fallen away husband, or you bring, that person that maybe just comes to Mass on Christmas, and they really see the church alive. They experience Eucharistic adoration. The picture on the right is Lanciano, the miracle of Lanciano. They can see Eucharistic miracles and be, their faith in the church and in the sacraments can be restored. All of this to say is, I think many of these things can be done on any pilgrimage, absolutely, right? I like to say, just go on pilgrimage, right? That's my ultimate goal, is that people go on pilgrimage and experience God in this way. But I would say that Verso does it best. And why? I think there's a couple different reasons why I think Verso does it better, and it partly because we have this in mind when we're planning trips. We have in mind that this is different than a vacation. There will be elements of every pilgrimage that's like a vacation, right? Maybe a priority for you is staying in really nice hotels. We can make that happen. Maybe a priority for you is eating at really good restaurants. We can make that happen, right? We can make your trip what you want it to be. But it will never be the same as a vacation. Number one, you're traveling with 30 to 40 of your closest friends that you would never go on vacation with. That's part of the sacrifice of pilgrimage, and that's part of the beauty of pilgrimage. Secondly, you're on someone else's schedule. On vacation, you do what you want, right? On pilgrimage, you are traveling as a group, and there's real beauty to that. There's sacrifice to that. The daily masses, the ability for Verso to find places that you might never find by yourself. The place on the right is the burial place of Andrew Kim Taegon in South Korea. And I just love this picture of our pilgrims praying quietly because we try to put prayer time in the schedule as much as possible so that you're not just checking these things off your list like you might on a vacation, but that you're really entering into prayer. So it doesn't mean you're not going to have fun. It doesn't mean that you're not going to experience great food or great culture. We really believe in experiencing the culture of places, but we also want you to receive what God has in store for you. And we're just simply instruments of that. We're simply the conduit of that. The other thing that I would say Verso does quite differently than most of other pilgrimage companies is our formation aspect. We are, as far as I can tell, the only Catholic pilgrimage company that has somebody, myself, full-time in formation. And, there's always more we can do, but we do a lot for pilgrims before they even leave. On the left, you'll see a copy of what we call the e-retreats. We have PDFs that we send out that people can pray and do some Lectio Divina and do some meditation and some exercises before they go on pilgrimage. They get a series of emails from us preparing their heart and their mind. We put together books that they take with them with reflection questions, with practical information that they can be their accompaniment on these trips so that, even if I'm not on the trip, I can't buy locate, I can't go on every single trip, I can help the group leader and the chaplain with that formation aspect. We believe really strongly in this. This is not the same as a vacation. This is why you need more than a travel agent. You need a pilgrimage company that understands formation, that understands the ability of what pilgrimage can do in your parish for your people. And we're those partners that believe really strongly in that. I want to hand it back over to Andrew here to talk a little bit about the Verso Way, which he teased earlier.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joni, for all of that. All those stories really wonderful, especially those stories of, the conversions that were experienced or just the enriching of people's faiths who perhaps were lukewarm as they stepped foot on the plane to join the pilgrimage for the first time. And just to kind of like riff off of what you were just saying before I even jump into this Verse Away piece, we were as a team reflecting just last week where we mentioned a couple stories. There was one or two stories mentioned about recent pilgrims on some pilgrimages we have just run. In the very recent past where pilgrims experienced, a reawakening of their faith, or even someone who was on the fence about Catholicism generally has now, I think, taken steps to join the church and become initiated. So, just to kind of like add to those stories, Joni, for the people listening, that these things are still happening, that they're not, things that happened long, long ago, that the pilgrimages that we are running even to this day are still, these things are still occurring and changing lives. So, thanks again, Joni. The Verso Way, as Joni mentioned, I kind of teased this a little bit earlier, is something really special, I think, that Verso brings to the world of helping people get on pilgrimage. It's something that people tend to really enjoy, and I'm really excited because we actually just went through a lot of this process with one of the diocesan priests for the Diocese of Bridgeport, Father Lionel, and his Our Lady of Aparecida community. They're heading to Turkey with us this fall, actually. And really using this type of program or this process, which is tried and true, helped us get his pilgrimage off the ground in such a short period of time. That first step that you see in the top left there, the discovery phase, is the first touch point that we normally have with a group leader. It starts with a discovery call, normally over Zoom, sometimes over phone, 15 to 30-minute phone call where we just kind of get to know each other a little bit. I get to know about what their role is at their parish, what they are hoping for the pilgrimage. Have they been on pilgrimage before? Are they common, regular travelers? All those sorts of things. We kind of just learn about each other. Then they get to learn about Verso. I present to them the Verso Way and what steps that they can expect when working with us, what the timeline is going to be like. The next step is going to be in that design phase, the mapping meeting. So it starts with the mapping meeting where we really just in short form, we go on a fact-finding mission. We try to gather all the information that we need in order to actually create a proposal for the person. So we ask very specific questions like, hey, what are the dates do you want to go on pilgrimage? Where are we specifically going to? Because sometimes in the discovery call, Group leaders don't even know yet where they want to go. They just know they want to go on pilgrimage. At the mapping meeting, we'll ask like, how many meals would you like reserved? What type of accommodations are you looking for? And we get to drill down more about the itinerary and things like that. What are the must-sees? What are the things that they think that they can skip out on? Um, from there, we move forward to the proposal review meeting, and that's where we kind of just sit down together and say, hey, this is what we put together based off of the facts that we found from our mapping meeting and discovery call. Is this still true to form? Is this still true to what you're looking for? Has anything changed? Do you have any updates? This is the pricing that we're looking at. And then we can kind of go from there to see if things need to be added or taken away before a contract finally gets distributed and eventually signed. Beyond that, though, that's kind of like where my role in the Verso way begins to fade, and I start to hand things off over to our pilgrimage operations team in the promotion and preparation phase, where they begin to kind of like put the meat on the bones, if you will. If the contract is kind of like the skeleton of the trip, the pilgrimage coordinators, Joni's role, pilgrim support, they kind of like put it all together and make a living being out of this kind of, trip that exists only in a contract form on a page. They make it come to life. And so they work with the group leader, they work with the pilgrims that are registering. We have a webinar sneak peek to kind of get people, wet their palate a little bit, learn a bit about Verso, learn about the pilgrimage, learn about the package inclusions, learn about the pricing, and all of that takes place in that promotion phase on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll begin launching registration. We'll get you a website up and running. We'll have marketing create promotional materials for you to help get the word out. And then kind of moving forward to that preparation phase, Joni's role really begins to take shape where she begins to send out those materials to help prepare pilgrims' hearts and minds for actually experiencing a pilgrimage as opposed to a vacation, as we just talked about. And then, of course, the next stage, the pilgrimage. Hopefully, you have a wonderful time and all of those things from the beginning of the discovery phase all the way through to preparation come to life on the ground and wherever you decide to go, and you have a wonderful time, and then you return for some unpacking. So that is very much in a nutshell the Verso way. This is takes place over the course of many months, of course. Many times we're working with group leaders even over a year before their pilgrimage. And so the Verso way is something that we use for very long periods of time to make sure that whatever you're experiencing has been done thoughtfully and intentionally. Thanks, Joni. And so, kind of just riffing off of that point again, these are kind of some of the outcomes that you can expect, largely determined through the mapping meeting and the discovery call, those types of meetings where we get this information. So, you can expect to get a fully fleshed out itinerary, your modes of transportation, whether that's group flight, what it's going to look like on the ground with the bus. Are you going to be walking certain places? Are you going to be taking public transportation? We work with you on those types of things. Accommodations. Are you looking for more simple religious guest house type of places? Perhaps you're looking for, as Joni mentioned, nicer, higher end locations to stay at night. Meals, same thing. Are you looking for just a welcome dinner and a farewell dinner, or are you looking for more meals scattered throughout the middle of the itinerary too? Promotion and registration, we'll work with you, as I mentioned before, in that promotion phase and how to get the word out using the sneak peek, using the marketing materials that Joni and our marketing team are able to create to promote to your community. Registration, as I said earlier, you have sales to help you get people registered, and you have your pilgrimage coordinator as well to help kind of work you along a good path towards getting your bus filled. As the departure date approaches, and then finally preparing the pilgrims for pilgrimage, as we've been talking about. So, thanks, Joni. Alrighty, so next steps. Really here, this is just kind of, hey, if you want to reach out to us, this is a good way to find out more. You can go to that link right there. That's our main website. It'll take you to our homepage, and then scheduling a discovery call. So we can kind of jump right into that Verso way in the discovery phase by scheduling a discovery call with me. That link right beneath that header, schedule discovery call, will take you to my meeting scheduler, and you can jump right on my calendar there, and we can start the process for getting your getting your pilgrimage going.
And we will be sending this out with the recording. Look, I'm technology.
There you are, Joni. Yep. Nice to meet you.
We will be sending this out too, and that link will be live with that. So
Yes.
we do have time for questions. I don't know if you have any questions, Patricia, to put you on the spot, but we're
Yeah,
always available email wise as well to follow up.
exactly.
So, but yeah.
All good.